Alright guys, we're going to be putting together the AXP skid plate for the Kove 450 Rally. So you guys have probably seen my initial video just unboxing it. Gotten everything out here. It comes with some nice instructions. And this comes with some pretty thick foam pads that you cut and then put right into the wing area right along the side here, and then right here. I don't know how much is going to be needed. It just shows only putting it in this outer portion of the bend, and then comes with a couple of plates that match up with the bottom of the frame, so those will be pre-installed onto the skid plate. Then there is a front adapter plate that mounts right to the front. And then the linkage extension guard as well. And that's the last thing. Will get mounted right up like that. So they give you a couple of these pieces of foam and assume they're gonna get deteriorated over time. So I think you can make one of the pieces work for the first mount. So I'll go ahead and peel off the adhesive. Try to get it nice and lined up, not sticking out. Nice. Second piece. Yeah. So first step, it says, is to take this little plate. I'm going to be attaching it to here. Alright, so it's giving you some spacing, so you don't need to really worry about not tightening these down right off the bat. You can just crank these down, I think. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So that guy. So the next is this flat block that rides along the bottom rails, the bottom part of the frame. Careful with the impact. You can see that it sinks them into the plastic, so you gotta be careful in that regard, not over tighten stuff. Okay, so you're going to be attaching one of the short bolts to the rear where it's not as thick. So they're having you do that on both sides. And then lastly is going to be this thick linkage guard. Here in Arizona, this is critical, and I'm glad that this is removable and replaceable, so that if you damage it, you can replace it. Perfect. So you guys can see, very nice and flush. Looking good. Again, I just got to give a big shout out to the guys at AXP Racing for sending me their new polymer skid plate, the HDPE skid plate that they now have available on their website. So I don't know if this is a good view or not, but I think it might make it a little bit easier to get this skid plate mounted up under here. In the past, this has been my biggest frustration with changing oil and taking the skid plate on and off. That other one with the SSXS undermounted plastic part that went over the stock carbon guard, just the whole setup was really awkward, and what ended up happening was the mounting bolts got bent, and once those were bent, it made it super hard to get on and off. The other thing is that the head of the other one was one of those sunk head, I don't know the exact terminology, but the tapered head bolt where it was a hex key, and that hex key, again, from it getting ground on the rocks as well as taking it on and off multiple times for oil changes, it started to get, boogered up on the inside, and just the combination of all of it made taking on and off the stock skid plate really frustrating. So what I like about this is it's an actual 10 mil. So as long as you haven't lost your 10 mil, this should be super easy to take on and off. Won't get as torn up as a little hex key. And the cool thing that I like about it is that it actually, these are going to be extra recessed because of that plate on the underside. Those are actually hidden, so those bolts are not going to be getting torn up. So getting them on and off should be super easy. So I think this AXP skid plate is going to alleviate a lot of the frustration that I've had. Because I've said it multiple times in my videos that the most frustrating thing was taking on and off the skid plate for me anyways with a Kove. Other than that, this bike is really intuitive in the design so that you can work on it really easy. Everything is 6mm hex keys for all the major fuel tanks. exhaust mounting. So that's really nice. So let's get this mounted up under here now. So there's 4, and then there's one long one that is on a collar that is going to distribute the load on that front mounting point. So I like that a lot. That's really nice. And it's got that really thick plate. I think after putting this thing together right now and just feeling it, I really think that this is going to be the ticket for the Kove in skid plate protection. And the reason why the Kove and the skid plate protection is so important is it's such a big surface area. So these holes in here, there's some give, and that's important in being able to get these to mount up easily, is that it's not just a tiny little hole. Nice. So we've caught 3 of the 4. Let's see how hard it is to catch this last one. Oh, it went right in. Money. Yeah, they're... All right, there she blows. Got it put on. The gap on the right side is like gigantic, and then on the left side it's like touching my tank. So doesn't bother me so much, you know. I mean, if somebody was looking at this like car and like was critiquing car lines, they'd be like, "Whoa, the gaps are way off." And I would agree. The left side is real tight against the tank, and the right side has a big gap. And I can show that to you here in a second. So kind of looking straight down the bike, you can see foam's not even touching the tank on this side, and then on this side it's up against the tank right here. So I don't really have a problem with that per se. You know, I think it's probably pretty hard with such a big piece, and these mounting tabs for the tank are bendable. So you go down a couple times on one side and it could push the tank in potentially. Yeah, I think there's just variances in tolerances when you're talking about big plastic pieces like this. I was concerned about how far this little tail on the mid pipe would come back to protect right here, but I think that's actually going to be perfect. It should, if I catch a rock, should slide off, and this has nice flexibility. The linkage guard goes back exactly where it should. One thing I noticed is because of these mounting blocks, it actually drops the skid plate by about, say, half an inch. Because on the other stock skid plate, it is right against the bottom of this pipe. And you can see here, there's quite a bit of a gap. Better airflow, reduced ground clearance, potentially maybe, but nothing significant, because actually the way that this scoops up is much sooner than the stock one. And actually, so your like attack angle on potentially whoops is much greater with this skid plate than the stock one. So just a quick update before I release the video. thought I'd go back and loosen up the skid plate and just readjust it a little bit, and made a big difference. Made it more squared and more symmetrical, and it's not smashed up. It's not even touching the tank over here now. So still a little bigger gap on the right side, but it's not as bad as it was initially. So just goes to show, just a little bit of adjustment, loosening it up, putting it where you want it, and then cranking it back down.